Hey, it's David with Oklahoma Ham Radio. I'm going to do my best to record this, but what I'm doing is building a TR-25 radio. The TR-25 is the TR-25 is a QRP CW radio for 2 bands. The kit is extremely nice. Give you an idea, came with printed instructions that are color. It's pretty cool. Additionally, you get a great case for it. You also get, there's 2 boards. There's an upper and a lower board. And everything comes packaged as upper or lower boards steps in order. So that's pretty cool. Should make it easier to find things. A couple things I got this anti-static pad. It is plugged in back there to the ground post on my my power strip. Along with that, I've got a it's a decent soldering station. Does do hot air. I also have there we go. I also have lead core solder. Not the safest thing in the world, but it does work a whole lot easier. Behind me back here, I've got the garage door open. It's a comfortable temperature, so I am working out in the garage. Down here, I have the the device that holds the board for me as I'm soldering, make things a little easier. Got a solder sucker and so on and so forth. Over here is my solder station. So I'm going to try my best to record down here as I put this together, and we'll see how it turns out. We'll see. So let's see, instructions. We start with please read me first. There's 2 boards, blah, blah, blah. Set the lower board aside for right now and start on the upper board. So, the upper board assembly manual. So let me get the upper board over here. Make sure I've got the upper board. Let's take a look at it and see. That is the lower board, so we'll put that in an anti-static bag, set it to the side, then worry about getting this upper board. These are the upper board parts, and this is the upper board. So the upper board has a screen on it. I say it has a screen, it has a spot for the screen right here. So lets you know it also has these 4 squares going across instead of 4 squares side by side. And on the top it says Penntek TR-25 revision C3B. Board was printed or designed 3/2021. It's a WA3 RNC. It says that on the upper board also. So let's go ahead and get this board put in here. Slide that apart and smack that board in there, taking care not to hit any of the surface mount components. All right, make sure it freely spins. That's good. I am looking up. So let's get the upper, these are the upper parts. So let's open up step one's part, which is right at the top. In step one, you mount this guy. So it is a 1x 16 megahertz crystal. Make sure the crystal is not down tight against the PC board. It should be at least 1/32 to 1/16 above the board. So, where does this go? It does not say. So you get to find it. Kind of makes me a little nervous, but we'll see if we can't find where it goes. Kick on the soldering iron so it has some time. I think X1. X1 is where it goes. X1 is right down here. Does not say that direction matters at all. Let's get it in the board here. X1. So we do not want it to be flush there. We want it to be raised up a little bit. So let's figure out how we're going to raise that up a little bit while I solder it. Maybe we'll put something like this underneath it. Let's try that. That's heat shrink. And that's not working real well. Can't get that underneath there. So maybe a little piece of wire. Let's tuck this guy underneath there and see if that gets it up to where it should be. Right, so what I'm going to do is hold this while I hit one end of it, and then so it gets held in place, and then yeah, go from there. So let's get enough solder on here just to tack that part in place. Looks like it's a little high, so let me adjust it a little bit down. It's maybe still just a little bit high, so let's get it down just a little more. I feel like that's probably about right. So let me pull this out, hit just a little more solder on here to tack the other side in place. It does not want to come off my tip here. Man. Don't like heating the crystal up that much. So let's see. That side's just a little high. Let's push it down just a little bit. So it's standing off a little bit. If we need to, we can adjust it lower. But now I want to go back. Now that both sides are being held, I can actually go back and make sure that it's soldered in place well. And what I just realized is my camera. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to try. Maybe I do it from the side here. Maybe that's the best way to do it. All right, make sure that my solder points look decent. They do. So let's go ahead and grab my little snips. Snip that off. I'm gonna hang on to those because I may need them for something later. I do have a concern. I don't know. So this is the upper board. The lower board's got to mount up against it. So I don't want to leave those pins very long. We'll see. But I also want to be able to move that out if it's too low. So we'll need to come back and revisit that one after I get further. So solder and trim the two leads. I'll go ahead and trim them. I don't think that it will need to go back out any. If anything, it needs to be pushed down just a little bit more, but I think okay, looks fairly straight. We'll see how that goes. Step 2, solder U1. It's a 28 pin connector. Makes sense. That's right there. .28-pin connector. Looks like that. Get up here close enough. So that's obviously going to go in U1 because it's the only 28-pin connector. You do want to make sure that your notch, if you're building this, you want to make sure your notch is pointing inwards toward the inside of the board. So let's get that guy slid down in there. On these, what I do is I hold it from the backside, get a little bit of solder on my tip again, and tack one of the corners down while you're holding it on the backside. It should hold it in place. You can flip it over, make sure that you're nice and flush. In fact, yeah. Now, not saying that you're not going to have to hold it some more here. What I do next, if I'm happy with the placement of that one, is get more solder on the tip, go to the opposite corner, and tack that one down. Now, you're gonna be coming back to these. Make sure that you get them good and soldered. That's just to hold it in place. Flip it over again, make sure that you're flush with the board, and then commence soldering. There's nothing on here electrical or that you need to worry about overheating. Obviously, you don't want to melt the plastic that holds the pins. I'm sorry, the plastic that, the socket, right? You don't want to melt that. So you don't want to get these overly hot, but it's not like there's a great deal of concern. I will say you want to check your orientation of that socket before you start soldering everything down, because if you want to talk about something that's not fun to unsolder, it's one of these guys. It's quite possible you damage the pads if you have to go back and resolder. Or remove, I should say. And then flip over and then resolder. Now I'll tell you a secret. There's nothing magical about which way this is going. The only reason for worrying about the orientation is so that if you ever have to replace that later, replace whatever you're plugging in here, the integrated circuit, you know which way to plug it in. That notch tells you where pin 1 goes. So doing it backwards risks damage later from plugging in an integrated circuit backwards. You know, I just realized I don't have my voltmeter out here or my multimeter out here anywhere. I have to get that here in a second. Right, so I don't see any solder bridges or anything. But let me find my multimeter. Okay, so now all we're going to do is go pin by pin, making sure that these make contact. And sometimes you lose where you're at. That one does not have a good seat. So let's get it soldered down there with a good seat. Check it again. Okay. That one's just isolated. I think this one's isolated, so we can check there. But yeah, the second one looks isolated. The third one, these two should connect. We don't have anything on the other side yet, but oh, this should connect to here. I wish I had a better light out here. So it looks to me like 3 and oh, it's so hard to tell. Oh, 3's isolated. Okay. So I was seeing something wrong there. This one's gonna go somewhere over here and connect. Don't know where. I guess I need to follow it. Here maybe? Okay, that one's connected. So that means 4 on this other side. It's going to connect to this spot. Okay. 5 right here is connecting to there. 5, 6. 6 is connecting to here. Okay, so let's make sure that 6. Okay, 7 is isolated on this side. 8 side, 9, 10. So this one is going to one of these. Right there. So this one okay, and that one's isolated on this side. This one's going to make sure that that side, okay, this one is going to here, so let's just make sure that that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Am I not hitting it here? Oh. Let's try it from the right side. Okay. That socket should be good. We can do some of these on this side now. Can't really guarantee. It's kind of hard to find sometimes because I like to ramble to myself. I'm sorry, talk to myself. I do it all the time. Okay, so that socket's in place, and I'm confident that it's good, so we can move on. The next thing to get installed is step 3. Looks like some LED lights. LED lights, the long part goes to the where it looks like there's multiple pieces. Oh, it's the actual OLED. Gotcha. Okay, so it says install and solder U1 20. Oh wait, that's the wrong spot. Install the OLED display using the provided white plastic spacers and 4 each minimum screw and nut. The nuts go on the bottom of the board. Take your time with this. Be very careful and do not lose your nuts. Always good advice. That's literally what the instructions say. Do not over tighten this hardware. Once this display is mounted, install 4 wires cut from 2 included sacrificial resistors from the display connector. Points to the PC board. See the photo. There's a photo right here that shows what it's talking about. We're going to cut some resistor legs off. They provided the resistors and use those legs to make this mount. So really what you're doing is this picture. Resistors can be discarded. Solder and trim 4 connectors. Solder and trim 8 connections, 4 on the display, 4 on the PC board. Important, place some clear fingernail polish on the bottom of the board on the screws so that the nuts don't come loose and you find them causing trouble later. This has occurred several times on the prototype. Okay? Think I got it, but we will put the instructions right there and go through it as we. So OLED display, spacers, and sacrificial resistors. And go ahead and put my anti-static wrist deal back on, since now I'm touching something that could be impacted by static. And we're going to do this. Does not say the best way to do this. It just says to do it. So, dump everything out here. These resistors are going to go last. I'm going to put these up in here so I don't roll them on the ground and lose them. Resistor is going to go in here. There's some nuts and bolts. I need to go get a small Phillips screwdriver. Should have thought about that. I'll be back. You're not going to be able to see this worth a flip, but I'm going to try to turn this and make it visible. So, it says that the nuts go on the miniature screws. Nuts go on the bottom of the board. So nuts go back there. So make sure we get this in the right direction. This goes through here. 2, 3, 4. Set that down that way. Put these washers on here. 1, 2, tray, 4. What I'm going to do is turn that so you can see how I'm going to do this. Obviously, gravity is going to work against you here. Unless, because in either direction, gravity is going to work against you. So what I'm going to do Let's turn this way and try to work to where gravity is not drastically impacting the situation. All right. Those holes line up with those holes, right? That's the important thing here. Yes. So now I've got to get these nuts on here on the back. And you don't want to lose your nuts, they say. They being the guy who came up with the instructions, at least. Don't know if the guy that came up with the instructions came up with the board design, but I would not be surprised if it wasn't WA3RNC. Just saying. I didn't look to see if, the author is in the instructions or anything, but okay, so 2 of those are on there. Three of those are on there. None of them are tight yet. Okay, I am not tightening this up all the way until I get these other little wires put in there. So that's on there, but I've got to cut. First I've got to get something that will pick those up because my fingers are too fat. All right, so I'm going to cut the legs off of this guy, solder them in there, and get this screwdriver out of the way for a minute. Cut them off as long as possible because I don't have a good measurement yet of how long they need to be. And if I screw it up, I've got other resistors that I can use as sacrificial little wires here. Okay, so those are clipped. I'm going to try to flatten this out as much, or you know what I'm saying. Just rub it on here, try to get to where it rolls out straight again. I don't know if that's the proper method of doing this or not, but that's what I'm going to do. Alright. So now we got these 4 little guys. And they're going to go through here and through there. I'm going to solder one so it's out of the way. Really all I'm going to do is tack it I'll come back and solder it well here shortly. Oh my, it fell through. Take these guys and pick that up again. Oh man, I really don't want to bend it, but I guess I have to. I really don't want to rub crap all over it, but I guess I have to. Alright, we're going to try it again. This time, I'm going to go through from this way into here and hold it on the other side. Maybe that's the trick. And then tack it in place. Wow, those are going to be a pain in the butt. So, let's hold it with tweezers. Okay, holding it down here with tweezers now, and try to tack it in place. I think I found a way to get that done now. So we'll hold it, we'll drop it through the hole. Make sure it's straight. Hold it with tweezers on this side. Get some solder on the tip here. And just try to get enough solder on there to hold it in place. The interesting thing is this one has now come loose. So I'm going to try to get enough solder on it to hold it in place, or melt the solder enough to hold it. Holy moly. Okay, those are ugly solder spots, but now hopefully I'll be able to come back and get this side and then go revisit that side. Alright, now we should be able to come back and just touch this side up to make sure it's nice and soldered. And make sure that we don't have any bridges. Go ahead and do this guy one time. Well, that's soldered. We'll test it after I trim them. Alright, so what I'm going to do is move this over here, try it this direction with the camera. Voltmeter. I should okay. So now the question is, are any of these crossing with anything else? So there are no, electronically tested, there are no, what do you call them? Spurious emissions. No, there are no solder bridges. And I need to find my screwdriver. With me in projects like this, that's what usually happens. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this way so I can show that, and I can talk here, and I can, okay. So now let's tighten this down some. Not overly tight, but tight enough. Okay, we will want to come back and hit this with fingernail polish. Don't have any today. So I'll have to run to the store and, I don't know, see if any of my kids have some. So next is R4. It's a signal LED sensitivity control, solder 3 leads. Okay, basically it's a potentiometer. Where does that go? That is, it's an R3, R4, R4. I move these instructions back over here so I can, yeah. R4. R4 is out there, okay? It's really only one way for it to go because there's 3 leads. 2 of them are on one side, one's on the other. Let's see if it says to do anything special before soldering it. It just says install and solder R4. It doesn't say, hey, jam this thing through the board and make sure that it's super close to the board because, you know, whatever. But some of these you do want to get pretty close from what I read earlier. So what I'll do is heat one side up, make sure it's pushed all the way in, all the way that it'll let you go anyway. All right, that looks good. Next step, that was step 4. We're on step 5. Step 5, second LED of some sort. Looks like a blue LED. Okay, so it says install and solder D6, the blue signal LED, mount on a plastic spacer. Make sure the LED is tight against the spacer. The longer LED goes through the square hole. Makes sense. Make certain that the assembly is straight and tight against the board. Solder and trim the 2 leads. Well, I think this must be the plastic spacer he's referring to. It is blue. So, let's see here. How do I mean, I would think that maybe, I don't know. Let's see. That says that goes into D what? 6. D6. Where's D6 on this piece of paper? Easier to find it here. It's red. Blue LED. It's up here next to the screen. So I am not for sure how this spacer thing works. I don't see anything. I mean, I could drop that in there and just solder it down close to the board, but I don't get that spacer thing. It says install and solder the blue signal LED mounted on a plastic spacer. Mounted on a plastic spacer. Is there a picture? Doesn't show it. Oh, the spacer is that guy. Gotcha. That little blue thing doesn't matter. It's just there to tell you which one is blue, whatever. All right, so let's make sure that we get the long peg through the square hole. long peg through the square hole. It says to make sure it's straight and flush. Well, the only way I know to do that is to tack one side of it, then adjust. Probably didn't get enough solder on there. Let's try it again. Tack one side of it. Solder keeps falling off the iron that I'm wanting to do here. Okay, let's get this one. Okay, I think that's pretty straight. Let's hit the other side real quick. That sound, that's my soldering iron, or I'm sorry, my doodad. Multimeter. Alright, looks flush, looks straight. Let's snip it. Snip it, snippers, snippers, there we go. It's gonna beep again here in a second. Let me know it shut off. What I'm going to do now that it's snipped, just go back and make sure it's got a hella good solder spot. Alright, looks straight. Alright, that was step 5. Step 6, solder the orange light. Okay. Step 6. I don't want to cut on that. Orange. So, orange goes into D7. D7, orange, D7, long leg, square pin, not the right spot. D7's right here. Okay, want it to be flush, all that good stuff. You could do this, you know, could take those, bend them out a little bit, but you still, just to hold it in place. But you still want to make sure it gets flush, right? So just bending those isn't going to do that. So you gotta apply just some pressure on the back. tack one of them. Make sure it looks flush and straight. And then solder the other one. But pushed in. Ah. Seriously? So we're going to go back and hit that now. I just don't like that. Just make sure that it gets soldered down well. Heat that up, heat this up, let it make really good contacts. And that should work. Okay. Next one, another LED. All right, which LED is this? All right, so where was I? Oh, this guy. This is number 7. 7 is D8. D8 is probably up there, but we're going to make sure on this diagram. D8 is over here. Long leg through square pad. No. That says the red one. D8 is the red one. Low battery warning light. Okay. Let's pull those out just for right now so it stays in there. Put this to where you can see it. Okay, this one is not square or straight or whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to adjust it over a little bit. Still not quite there, so we may need to do a little relief from this side and then some over here. Okay, that looks better. pretty square to me. So flip those two. Alright, so we're through step, I don't know, 7. Install the capacitors. So, capacitors, that's them. Capacitors. So capacitors, right here and here, they need to go into C3 and C13. They need to be tight against the board. So C3 and C13, see where those are. C13's up there. So C13's up here. Let's go ahead and hit that one. Tight up against the board. Okay? Let's do that. Long one through the square hole. That is right. So what I'm going to do with this, hit the first one, push it in, let it solder. I held it in pretty snugly pretty firm, because they specifically say make sure it's up against the board. I have a reason, I know why, or I have what I think is why, but I don't know for sure. Well, okay, that one's not wanting to solder. Sometimes you find those. So let's go ahead and just get it going here. Okay. I hate getting those real warm. My fingers on the back to tell me if I'm getting it too hot, and also to hold it in place as I solder. Let's go ahead and take that one off. Take that one off. What I'm going to do is find the other one, solder it, and then come back to this one to make sure that it's soldered on there well. I want it to cool off some before I hit it again. This goes to C3 was what it was. C3. There's C28, 29, 4, C3. C3's on this side, long pin, square hole. Hopefully you saw that from this camera. We're just going to spread them out a little bit to hold them for a second. Get some solder on the tip. Flip it over. Getting kind of muggy. It's getting kind of muggy. Make sure that stays on there good. gonna snip these off and then come back to the other one. Just make sure that it's soldered down well enough. And there's no bridge. In fact, I'm going to put a little bit of solder on the tip first so it transfers heat efficiently. That's one. There's two. There should be nothing between them. Come back up here. Hit one. Two. Make sure it's firm against the board. I'll share something with you. The reason I don't like bending those over is you never seem to get as clean of a solder job as you want on them. But these have to be right up against the board. I think because it's a height thing when you put another board on here, but just a guess. Okay. We're on step 10, install and solder the capacitor C22. It's 10 unifarad or whatever. Install the next capacitors. So there's 3 of them. Step 9 is actually where we are. Alright, step 9. Looks like we got one more capacitor after this. Long leg, square hole. Always. So this goes into C4, C28, and C29. Again, it doesn't say make sure it's snug against the board, but I'm going to make the assumption. It doesn't say lift it off the board either. So we need C4. I believe C4 is right here. C4. Yep. C4, C28, and C29 is where? C4, 29, 28. So it's going to go here, here, and here. Let's do C4 first. Spread them apart just a little bit to help hold it. Tip on the end of the, solder on the end of the soldering iron. All right, got that one. Next one. square long, verify on the back, peel them apart just a little bit. If you soldered one of these, you soldered 1,000 of them, it seems like, but you can always make a mistake. Too hot. Getting it too toasty. So, go ahead and cut those. Come back and hit it with. Just make sure that it's down there well. That the connections are being made well. We'll come back and get that one. So that is that one, and 29. Okay. It's like one leg wants to solder on these and the other one doesn't. Hate getting these hot like that. Still not going. Okay, we're ready to move on to the next step. Number 10. Number 10, install these guys, huh? Nope, install this last. This last little itty bitty guy. Let's see what it says. Any special considerations? Install and solder the capacitor C22 tight against the board with the longer lead to the square hole, trimmed to 2 leads. Well, you know, normal. So C22. C22. Good. It is right underneath the screen here. Along the square. We're going to tack it. This time on the one that's been the most difficult for me to get down. Wow. Okay, we're going to let that cool off some before I hit the other side. That one got pretty hot pretty quick. Man, it didn't burn my finger or anything, but it did get hot fairly quickly compared to the others. It makes sense, right? It's smaller. So let's try to be quick on this one. Yeah, not nearly as bad on that pad. It's still got pretty warm over there. Right, so now I'm just gonna go back. Make sure I don't see any solder bridges or anything that looks too concerning. Put just a little bit of solder on the end so it transfers heat better. All right, we got that. Coming up on an interesting piece, whatever. So the next part is these little, 3 of these guys. They're the connectors for your various things. The key, it looks like headphones maybe, and maybe something else. So let's see what it says. Install solder jacks 3, 4, and 5 tight against the bottom of the board. Straighten any bent pins before installing. Solder 15 pins. Set the board aside for later. All right. So any bent pins? I don't think there's any. So one goes on this side, that side, and that side. Let's just make sure that we got those in the right spots. So it looks like that's 3, 4, and 5, J3, 4, and 5, J3, 4, and 5. Yep. All right, so J3. says to make sure that these are flush against the board. So that one's not going to go there. Oh, do you mount them on the bottom? Tied against the bottom of the board. So these do go as it says on the bottom of the board. So let's see if we can get these pins all lined up. Okay. There's that one. I'm going to get some solder again on the tip and hold one pin, tack one pin in place while I hold it tight. Let's see. Okay, that looks like that one's being held fairly tight, so let's go to this opposite side. Hit it real quick. Make sure that it's tied up against the board. At least it's tacked in place now. And come back and put a sufficient amount of solder on this one while I hold it up against that board. Put a sufficient amount of solder on this one. Boy, the humidity out here in the garage is not helping, I don't think. Okay, I'm going to check to make sure that those don't make contact with each other, but you know what? I don't like this one. So I'm going to take the solder sucker, suck some of that solder out of there. Just jam it. Christmas, come on. Let's make sure that those aren't making contact with each other where there shouldn't be. Those two are making contact. Let's just clean that up just to make sure. Maybe they're supposed to make contact. I don't know, but I doubt it. Let's see. We still got contact there. Okay, so now the question is, if I were to put this, do I have contact here? Ah, it's okay, because these two make contact with each other, even though it's not soldered to anything. Gotcha. So it doesn't matter if they connect there or not. And I don't see a solder bridge. So let's go ahead and put this one on over here. Ah, bent pin. All right. Enough solder on the tip to hold it. Do this one in the middle here. Since I now know that it doesn't matter if those make contact. Sure that's firm up against the bottom. So now we can go tack these in. Man, come on. Some of these don't want to solder right. Looks like it's pressed sufficiently up against the bottom, so now I'm gonna have to get this next one, I have to take this apart some. And I'm gonna tilt this camera down so you can see a little better. Make sure I'm not damaging anything. Alright, looks good. Let's go hit the rest of these. Boy, get on there. I didn't want to get over there. So we'll solder sucker this. solder sucker and clean this tip off and get this solder off of this connector, because I think that's potentially going to cause a problem. Yep, got it. Okay. So, now that I'm here, and these guys are all soldered on the bottom, let me touch up this one real quick. Okay. Now that these are all on the bottom, mounted, the instructions say, well, when you put these on, make sure that you get them way down flush against the board. Evidently that's important, because it is in bold and underlined, tight against the bottom. But it says now to take this board and set it aside for later. Okay, I will go ahead and put it inside of this anti-static bag and put the parts in with it that are left right here, these 3 steps. Put those in there with it. That way when I lose it, I lose all of it together, right? All right. So, ziplock that. And get it put over here to the side. Let's see. So, it says, the interesting thing is the instructions continue on as if you're continuing here, but I don't think you're supposed to. So let me see if I can find something. It says upper board. Well, okay. So I think I go on to the lower board. And so lower board instructions. Okay, we're now, let's see, this is the upper board. We've done what we can on that. We're now to the lower board assembly. Make sure that this is ready when I need it. This was the lower board assembly. So let's get this in here, where we know it's not going to damage anything. Yeah, lower board instructions. Parts for the lower board. And toroids. All right. Toroids. Let's put toroids up here. Get this to where we can read it. Install and solder relay RL1 to the board with polarity bar toward the center of the board. Okay, RL1. RL1 is right here. So let's get it opened up. There's a mark on this side that's a line. There's a line on this board. And you just line those two up. Make sure the pins go in well. aren't bent over. Make sure your soldering iron's already on. Move these parts over. Just getting some solder on the tip here. Solder tip. For right now, I'm going to get enough on there to tack and hold one corner, hopefully. Just going to use that to hold it. Now I'm going to hit the other opposite corner again, same way. Don't worry, we will come back. So right now that's just held on there. Strong enough that I can go ahead and solder the rest of it correctly. So let's just look at it, make sure that we got good solder joints on every one of those spots. Feeling the back side of this, make sure I'm not getting the component too hot. Doesn't feel like I did. So I think we're good. That one should be mounted. So we're ready to move on to 2. Number 2 looks like a big diode. Diodes do have polarity. Well, polarity matters on the diode. Let me state it that way. All right, this big ol' diode that's already bent for us. Carefully form the leads of diode D5 to fit on the board. The banded end goes toward the square pad. Position the diode fairly close to the board, about a 1/4 inch off. So where's D5, right? D5 is going to be up here. We don't want this sitting right on the board like that, evidently. We want it slightly off the board. So we're going to, again, take a little bit of solder, put it on the tip. Put enough on there to hold it. We are off the board some. don't know if you can see right here, we're off the board just a little bit. Again, line goes to the square pin right here. So line in the square pin. I think we're good there. I don't like heating diodes and things like that up. Resistors, I don't mind. Heat a resistor up. But diodes, I don't like heating up a lot. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Alright. So that's standing off the board some. You can see it there. Instructions say 1/4 inch. That looks to me to be about 1/4 inch. So, install the polyfuse. Polyfuse is this, number 3. I think this probably mounts flush, so let's lay it down and find out. Go ahead and put my wristband back on here. Polyfuse. Install the polyfuse on the board. Bend this part over as shown on the overlay before soldering. Polyfuse goes into F1. F1 is in the top left side of the board. So let's go ahead and put it in here. You know what? I think we gotta get that down in there past those notches. Oh, that bent. Okay. Well, see if we can pull that through here some. From this side. Okay, that one came through. We're going to lay it down like so, and then solder it. All right. The polyfuse isn't going to come off unless I intentionally take it off. All right, so that's, let's see, number 3. Number 4, install and solder the DC jack. DC jack. And I bet that this needs to be down pretty close to the board. And I bet this is J4. Yep. J4 is way up in this area right up here. So I'm gonna have to carefully loosen this up. You can't slide this across because you got some surface mount components here that you don't want to damage. Alright, so J4 goes in here and it should be flush with the board. So let's get some solder on the tip. I'm going to just hit one of these, making sure it's down on the board well. Let that cool off, then go hit the rest of them. So Same logic across pretty much every component. It's right up snug against the board. All right, so that one's done. Let's go to number 5. Oh, these pins must be trimmed on this guy. Interesting. Wouldn't have thought that. This is on 4. Wouldn't have thought that those would need to be trimmed, but it says for proper fit, you gotta come back and trim these off. So we'll do that. So I'm gonna get those, make sure that that solder's not sticking up too high on those then. Hope that's not going to cause an issue, but with where it is on the board, I can come back to that and clip it off shorter if it needs to be. Kind of think it will. That's bugging me since it mentioned it so much. I'm going to keep trying to get it shorter, but all right. Make sure that guy's in there good. So it is. So we're finally on to 4. No, 5. 5. Install this guy. Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Install the BNC adapter. Let's go for it. That's going to go on this side. I think it's just going to go out like this. That would make sense. I wish. Well, it would have to because it's got to go out that side of the board. It doesn't go facing that way. It faces this way. So this one could get hot to the fingers. So I'm going to solder again one point of it. So I soldered this back pin first, because front ones look like they could potentially need to get pretty warm. Yeah, those front ones are definitely causing the outer portion on this BNC connector to get warm. So we're going to do what we can real quick, let it cool down, and then come back and hit it again. Man. Alright, well, it's on there hella good, I think, so. Alright, so that is, which one? That was, so now it looks like we got 3 potentiometers. Three potentiometers. I think that's good. Says it makes a big deal about this needing to be straight and level. I think I've got it straight and level. That BNC connector is what it's talking about right here. So let's make sure it's straight and level. Maybe. Now, with where it is on the board, I think I'll be able to come back and hit it, adjust it if I need to. So use the solder sucker to suck the solder out again, reposition it potentially. But install and solder the side tone level pot 15, low battery adjustment pot 38, and PA bias pot 35. Does it do all of them? All of them, it doesn't say anything special. All of these should be the same. They look like it. Makes sense. So now figure out where those go. R38, R35, and 15, 38, 35, and 15. So 2 are on the back side here, 1's over here next to this power jack. So let's do the one next to the power jack first. My Corona. Okay, these will push in, kind of snap in place to hold themselves in place for you. But you don't want to damage those legs. You don't want to have it slightly off or one of them not bent right with what's sent to you. So just do it gently. Make sure that you get all three legs in their spot. Then just give it a little push. They'll go right in and hold. Doesn't say anything special about, hey, these need to be as low as possible or anything like that, so I think we'll be good. I need to go back and touch that one up. Okay, that should be okay. This one still, I just don't like. Clean the tip off. Should be making contact now. Well, this one over here is soldered, but it just doesn't have much solder there. And just a little more, just to make myself comfortable. All right. Install Q10, blah, blah, blah. Let's see, there's the parts. See what this guy is. He's in a package of his very own inside of a package. So pull him out and see what he is, hopefully without damaging him. Okay, so let's take it over. This makes sense. Boy, getting into that guy's fun. All right, all it is one of those types of ICs. So it is a, so it's a TO-92 FET blah 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 with the flat side as shown on the board overlay. Position the part with about 1/4 lead length, quarter-inch lead length above the solder, above the board, solder and trim the 3 leads. All right, so we're going to take this guy out of here without damaging it or pulling a leg off accidentally or any sort of that craziness. All right, there's a flat side. This is going to go into which position? Q10. Q10 is somewhere on this board. Q8. Q10. It's pretty much in the middle. Well, if you're looking at the top of the board, it's on the left-hand side. Flat side goes toward the flat side on the board. I mean on the screen. So there's a, it's kind of beveled. The beveled goes toward the curved side, the flat side goes toward the flat side. So leave it about a 1/4 inch up, it says. Off the board. I've been 2 of the legs over, solder the middle one. You don't want to get these too hot either. So I'll try to do this one fairly quickly. Right, that should be holding it. Now I can lift these other 2 legs up. Just look and say, we may be able to come out just a little more on that, but not a lot. All right, let's hit that side, hit this side. It is humid today in Oklahoma. And I'm sure those of you in Hawaii or whatever, Florida, whatever, you live with 90% humidity all the time. I bet it's at least that here today. Temperature is down, which is nice, in the 80s. However, the humidity makes it sticky. Do this one the same way. Let's go with, I think it was Q8. Q8 is on the right side of the board, right over in here, right next to a bunch of surface mount components that are already installed. Flat side goes in toward the inside of the board, according to the masks there. And it says, I'm sure leave it about a 1/4 inch off. Yep, 1/4 inch lead length. So we're gonna kind of do this one the same way. Give it about a 1/4 inch. Bend over the 2 sides. Yep. Tack the middle. Straighten out the 2 sides. Then solder those 2. This I'm gonna have to pull up with this X-Acto knife or tweezers or something, because I got it too far over there. And slam that one on there. Alright, that one went on a little easier. Visually inspect it and make sure that it doesn't look like there's anything that could be a solder bridge between them. Next, install and solder the capacitors for C31, 52, 53, 69, 68, 69, and 70. Make sure that this camera is still pointing at a good spot. As good as can be anyway. Expect as, yeah, whatever. So here we go. C31. Pretty much it's C31 is this side. Again, square. Here we go, maybe. How about this? Long pin, square hole. It's not necessarily a square hole, but a square solder pad. Okay, let's see if it says any special considerations, like make sure these are tight against the board. All capacitors except C53 must be installed tight against the board. C53, we need to remember that one because it lays over. So this one was C31. See what I'm doing with my finger there, holding that capacitor in while I solder it so it stays tight up against the board. And I can also feel the capacitor to see if I'm getting it too hot. That way. Alright, should be tied up against the board. Just gonna go back and clean up that solder spot now that I cut those little wires off. The leads, I guess, or the legs I cut off. Go back and just make sure that the solder spot looks decent and is, you know, on the pins, the legs and the pad, not just the leg or just the pad. Make sure that that one is C53. C53 is a special one. So C68. C53 is right there. We don't know. I think that, yeah, it lays down that way. So we'll do that next. But for right now, check long leg square. Okay, we gotta figure out laying this one down. So let's read about that one. It says C53 must be installed tightly against the board. Note that C53 must be installed laying down on the board. Bend the legs before soldering. Solder and trim 12 leads. Okay. So you still do, again, same polarization here, same layout, long leg, square peg. Let's lay that down there, bend one back. Well, I'm not a big fan of this component. Well, there's a reason for it, I'm sure. It's just kind of a pain in the butt. Maybe that's got it. Should not have taken that long to put that one on there. Anyway, whatever. We got one more. one more of these guys. Tell you what, everything I've got needs to be sharper or whatever. Not everything's been worn down. But I don't want to go spend money on new stuff. Install and solder on C36 type. C36, C36. Square, long. All right. See if these two pads want to take solder in this high humidity day. Okay, so do we want to continue? I think for right now, I'm taking a break on step 11, which is this big guy. All right, got about an hour left tonight on this. Let's see what I can get wrapped up. The next thing goes right here, so let's get it opened up. There are multiple pieces in here. I'm going to turn on a couple more lights real quick. So on step number 14, there's a picture of it and the instructions right here. That's what we're going to be putting together. So step 14, form the leads of the final RF amplifier FET IRF 510 or 510 so that the three leads mate with the mounting hole while the tab hole mates with the FET mounting hole through the heatsink. See the photo. Place the heatsink against the board with the clear mica washer between the heatsink and the FET. Fit the FET leads through the holes and then insert the mounting screw from the bottom through the board, heatsink, mica washer, FET tab, and plastic insulator. Place the nut on top of the plastic insulator. Make sure the plastic insulator fits inside the FET mounting hole. Align the FET and heatsink with the mica washer between them. Tighten the screw fairly tightly, being certain not to deform or damage the plastic insulator. Use an ohm meter to check for shorts from the FET tab to ground. Solder and trim the 3 pins. Secure the clear washer. Put some, fingernail polish on it. Again, don't have any fingernail polish, so I will be getting fingernail polish tomorrow, evidently. I did read that, and I didn't do anything about it. So it's my own fault. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put back on my strap here for grounding. Trying to get this guy out of this bag. Alright, let's turn this over here so we can look at the assembly of this thing. So it looks like Those go through there. Okay. So we got to bend these. Looks like just a little shy of there. You know, it's a hot day, and I wanted a breeze, but I'm getting more of a breeze than I care to have. So I'm going to have to get up and turn and close that door. Maybe it just calmed down. We'll see. See how that lines up real quick. That lines up with that hole. It's going to go up through the board. So let's go ahead and get all this put on the board first. Gonna go through there first, and then through the mica sheet. Well, that's a bit of a challenge here. All right, so now we put this washer on here. And then this nut. And I had a little screwdriver that I should have found before I started all this. right there. Okay, let's try holding that with something. I know y'all can't see this worth of crap, but this one's gonna take me a bit to try to get everything lined up and hold that nut while I screw that in. Everything lined up there. It should be good. It says to do some testing here. Let's see what we need to test. It says use an ohm meter to check for shorts from FET tab to ground. Okay. I'm not getting anything from this FET tab to ground. Okay, but I should be from that screw, but not the FET tab. So that makes sense because that insulator is protecting it. Okay, so now I should be able to solder those 3 points. Get the soldering iron hot again. Hopefully we can see this. Yeah. Wire snippers. All right. I can just touch that up a little bit. Alright, see that's on there now. Not hot. I wouldn't expect it to be hot. I'm gonna do. I cheaped out. Well, I didn't cheap out. I got lazy. I ordered them pre-wound. So L13, L13, T2, L12, L14, L11. Right. So I knew I would not feel like winding toroids. I knew work would be keeping me pretty occupied, so I did it. I paid the $30 for the pre-wound toroids. All good. There's a video I have about winding toroids, but I know how to do it. I just feel like I need to justify to you why I paid for it. Whatever. It's all good. If you order the kit pre-wound toroids, you may skip to 12B. Well, we're going to skip to 12B. 12B. 12 is about how to wind the toroids. 12B, we've already got wound toroids. So, start with T2. Okay? T2. So, open that bad boy up, dump them out. T2 has 3 wires coming off of it. Yep. 3 wires coming off of it. Oh, it's actually 4. The center wire is twisted. It's tied 2 wires together and twisted. So let's go, let's see. Place a twisted pair of wires in the center hole. The other 2 on either side, doesn't matter which ones, so long as the center connector includes 1 of each. Okay? Keep all the coils upright and close to the board. Solder the connectors. So let's go figure out where T2 goes on the actual image. So T2 goes right here in the middle. T2. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and fold over the 2 outer wires to hold T2 close to the board. For right now, again, solder the center one. T2. Okay, that is close to the board, tightly wound, all that good fine stuff. Let's go through and get those cleaned up. 1, 2, 3. do want to hit this side just a little better. We can do, though, check some things here. Okay, that's making good contact. So, it's the first one. Quite a few more toroids to put on here. Say the next one, go to start with T2. Next is L11, 10 turns, black core, solder and trim the 2 connections. Doesn't say anything special. We're going to keep it tight to the board though. So L11, so T2 is done, L11. Make sure here maybe yeah, it's as good as we're getting with the setup I got, but maybe one day I'll get a better setup. L11 is, it's 12, 13, 14, 15, L11 is right there. So, the question on L11 that I have is L11 has 2 wires. I've got 4 pins. I guess that's so it can go to either side. Let's do some checking on that board. I would suspect that these 2 are connected and those 2 are connected. This one is not, that one's not. Okay, so there's 4 holes in this board. You can choose either 2 as long as they're opposite of one another. So you can choose 2 on this side, 1 of the 2 on this side, 1 of the 2 on that side, is basically what I'm trying to say. Whatever gets it in there right and straight for you based on the direction of the toroid, right? Let's get straight. We're going to hold it and tack one side down again. Try to anyway. Alright, so we should be able to, theoretically, these two sides should connect now, and they do. Alright. There is some pretty good resistance there. Okay, so now we go on to 12, 13, 14, 15. 12, 13, 14, 15. So it's this one, this one, this one. Looks the same. What I'm going to do is just make sure that this side and that side don't connect. Basically the top and the bottom, right? So the side on this side of the board does not connect to this side of the board, which means that you're connecting from holes on that side to holes on this side. So we need 14, 12, 13. I've got two 13s. Wonder if that's a 13 and a 15. I wonder if 13 and 15 are the same. Let's look at the instructions for building the toroids. Or toroids. So 15 and 13. So one's 20 turns, one is which ones am I saying? 15 and 13. Yeah, 13's 20 turns, 15's 13 turns. Both of these, as you can see, are labeled L13. So far, the first issue I've seen with this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. This one's a 20 turn. This one is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 turn. Yep. This is 15. So I'm going to set 15 aside for right now. I'm going to do 13, 12, 13, and 14. So let's start with 12. Well, this number might as well. After I do install these toroids, I'm done for the night, I think. I'll just, I want to take it slow and enjoy it. Okay, yeah. So in the instructions further down, it talks about what I was talking about that side of the board and this side of the board are where you solder these in place. So 12. Which one's 12? I'm sure the board has it printed on there, but old man eyes don't let me see it very well. So we want to get this tight against the board as much as possible and straight as much as possible. Alright. Now it says, and I may very well do this, you can use some hot glue and just tack those so that they have even less of a chance of getting moved around. Let's see. So the next part is step 13, which is installing these little crystals right here, which is interesting because the toroids are listed before it. So I will tell you this, these two are out of order. This location and the toroids are out of order in the instructions. No big deal. So I think I'm done for the night. Just dropped my cell phone over here on the side of the table and whatever. I'm done. I'm going to show the board up close real quick with where I'm at and let you know. I'll be back out here tomorrow and do more tomorrow, but here's where I'm at with the board right now. Those toroids are mounted, so on and so forth. I do need to get some fingernail polish and, you know, put some on this, put some on the one component on the other board. So anyway, step 13 of the, let's see, this is the lower board. Step 13, install the IF crystal filters X1 through X4. Crystals have been measured and sorted so that they must be installed properly for maximum IF filter effectiveness. Let's see, the crystals are numbered according to the reference designator where they should be installed. Crystal marked 1 will be mounted on X1, and so on. Crystal leads need to be formed by carefully bending them to 90 degrees. See photo. There's the photo. Mounting the crystals. Mount the crystals down tight against the board, solder and trim 8 leads. Ground the crystal cans with wires cut from the included sacrificial resistor. There is one right here. We could also use all these little deals that I've held on to. Do not overheat the crystal cans. Be quick when soldering the cans. Trim the ground wires. The resistor can be discarded. So we've got them numbered here 1 through 4, and it tells me on the board 1 through 4. I'm gonna go ahead and put my wristband back on here to ground myself out, and we got to figure out the holes are on, you know, the holes are on this side of the board, so the holes are there, and the grounding piece is up here. So, let's see how easy these are to get in. Looks like they do align. What I'm going to do is bend one of them over. And then make those more sharp turns instead of more rounded. So let's see here. Let's see where they need to go now. Now I'll use some various little contraptions here to try to bend them at sharper 90-degree angles, but that's not necessarily working like I wanted it to, so go with the tweezers. to get those bends more sharp at 90-degree angles. Having troubles today with vision, evidently. All right, we're going to do one at a time here, just getting them soldered in. You use the same trick as before. Get the solder on the tip, hold one corner of it. I'm going to try to be very quick with these. Okay, that one's being held. So we got a good solder spot on that one. This is held flush against the board. So let's trim that guy. All right, that was not too bad. One down. Let's get the others. One and two. does not want to take solder. Three looks to be on there. Okay, now let's get number 4. I'm gonna go touch these up real quick. Just a real quick. All right, crystals are on. Now we need to ground those crystals. Basically the sacrificial little guy here. Let's see how much. So it doesn't take a whole lot, but I'm going to give myself, I'm going to cut these halfway across, basically. When I say halfway, basically I'm cutting each leg in half. All right. So what I've done on that resistor, Right, so what I've done on the resistor is basically cut that much wire. It's not much, half of each lead. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to get these to stay in there while I solder. I think what I'm going to have to do is bend the top of it over so that it grabs onto that crystal a little bit. All right, yep, that should work. So I'll bend that over so it grabs that crystal a little bit. I'll put a shot of solder on the crystal, drop this in, solder it to the crystal. that's my plan. See how it works. A little dab of solder on the crystal. Boy. Drop that through so that it touches the crystal. And let it fall all the way through. Try this again. I figured it out on the first one. And go from there, right? Maybe I can hold it. Part of my problem is this thing spinning. Let's go ahead and tighten that down so it quits spinning. Alright, maybe hold this with these wires. Heat this solder up to where it connects to that wire. And let go. That seemed to work. Alright, let's go ahead and get the other side here. That should definitely be grounded. We can check it. Left that on all night, so that's going to be good. So, crystal outside to ground, which really we can test from over here. That one is in fact grounded out. So, clip that one off. Alright, so I'm going to go through and put solder globs on the corners of all of these. Alright, here's my logic. If I do that, then the crystal has time to cool off again. Whatever heat is in there has time to cool off again by the time I get back to it. So hopefully we don't overheat it. That's, you know, a warning that he gave in his instructions. Well, that one's gone. Good news, I have other things that have been chopped off during this process that I can use. Number 2's done. See if we get ground between these two. We do. We do. Good solder spots then. There they're mounted. Here's those grounds. So we're now on step 14. We're on step 14, which is these connectors. I'll be interested to see how he suggests doing these. Be even more interested to get them out of the bag. I need some sharper tools. My tools have gotten dull, much like my vision. All right, so you have this scenario, right? So these pieces slide inside of here. You need these connect the two boards together. So it's going to tell me some way to best do that. Okay, so the next step is to join the two boards together. And he explains what seems like a quite complicated process for doing this. All right, that camera just fell. So actually it's my cell phone. I've dropped that cell phone so many times it's ridiculous in this process, but need something to talk into. So it says we're going to need this board, this upper board, the lower board, these connectors, and it does say that we need the screws. And I put those screws someplace where I wouldn't lose them. I put them in a Ziploc bag so that they would stay to where I could find them. They're in this bag. So it says we need these screws. All right, so I'm going to read it to you first because, you know, you can't read instructions, but okay, so we've got two of these connectors and of course the matching pins. It says the 16-pin jumper J1, J2 will be installed together on both the upper and lower board. This step requires some attention. Okay, the male connector will be installed on the lower board with the heat sink, which is this board. The female connector will be installed on the upper board with the OLED display. In order to allow maximum pin engagement for these connectors, the female connectors must be assembled tight against the upper board. There will be a small gap between the female connector body and the bottom of the upper board. Start this step by installing the male header pins onto the top side of the board with the heat sink. Okay, so this board has a heat sink. This is the top side. We install them there. Then it says make certain that these pins are tight against the board and straight. Solder pin 1 on each connector. Examine before soldering the rest of the pins. Once all 32 pins are soldered, locate the assembled top board with the 12mm spacer attached. And the plate, okay, so the spacer is attached right here. I never detached them through this whole process. Let's see, and place the board upside down in front of you with the spots on the board for J1, J2 closest to you. So basically we're going to flip it over this way like so, and then place the 16 mil connectors, just place them in there. You just set them in there, don't solder them. Now you then mate the boards together. Once everything's lined up, carefully place the boards together so that it takes into account these holes and then also where these connectors end up being. Once everything's lined up carefully, press the boards together, stop and investigate. If something doesn't seem right, then it isn't. Let's see, or if the board holes do not line up with the board tight together, locate the 4 screws, use them to secure. So these 4 screws, use them to secure the 2 boards together. Turn the board assembly right side up with the display controller facing up. Now the object is to fully engage the female connectors onto the lower board pins by pushing the female connectors down into the male pins as far as they'll go. This may require the use of a flat object to gently push the female connectors or the female connector pins to fully seat them onto the pins. Note that this will let a small gap between the upper board surface and the connectors. So basically, long and short of it is you're going to have a gap, and so that will guarantee that you're getting maximum connectivity between these. Okay, got it. So first thing to do is to solder these male pins on here straight. So what I'm going to do is put this back in this board, or back in here, because it's much more comfortable to solder knowing that your board's not moving around on you. Let's start by taking the short end, fitting them through this board. Short end through this board. Straighten up that toroid. Right. So, the way we should do this is to solder pin 1. Pin 1 normally, I'm going to solder the square one. I'm not going to put a ton of solder on it. I'm just going to use that to hold things. So let's make sure that it's flush and straight. Looks flush and straight to me. So let's go ahead and hit pin 1 over here. Tack that pin. That looks flush and straight. So what I like to do, just so you know, on these is go back, hit the opposite corner, and reheat that solder, making sure that it's pressed down so that then that side I'm guaranteed is not just, well, I'm not guaranteed, but I don't think it'll be higher. You know, if you've, itty bitty measurements matter, believe it or not. So, especially when you're taking 2 boards trying to align the pins perfectly. So I got that on there. Let's just go through here and get all these pins. Okay, let's go touch those up a little bit. Okay, so that side's put in. Now comes the magical part. Next, what I don't understand is why we don't just push these on like so, and then put the board on and then solder them. It's not how he describes to do it, so we're gonna try to follow his directions. He says basically you're gonna have to put everything together loose, then screw the screws in, potentially go from there. So I'm going to set these on here. I'm going to try something a little different than what he suggests, but that's maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And maybe he tried, or I keep saying he, maybe they tried this and they said this is too complicated. So let's see if I can't get these holes up here to align while it's loose. So this side's good. That side's good. So theoretically I should be able to push this down now. Okay, and I see what he's talking about a gap. All right, so now I'm gonna pull this top board back off. I'm gonna seat these the rest of the way down. All right, and then put this board back on. Align it again with those pins. And sure enough, there is a gap, but there's still enough to solder on this side. The holes line up. And go ahead and screw these in here real quick. I'm not going to make them super tight, but I am going to just screw them in. Okay. Okay, so as you can see up here at the top, there is just a little bit of a gap, and down here they are connected well. So now I need to go back and solder those points, all these little guys. I hit one on each real quick. I'm going to go to the opposite corner, or close to it. Inspect that in a bit. Inspect all of the pins. All right, let's take a look. Don't see any bridges. Maybe one that needs potentially to be cleaned up here. All right, so now I'm going to take my voltmeter and check each one of these. I say voltmeter, it's a multimeter. Just check continuity between those on both sides of the board. Don't like that one. Okay, so the fourth one here, I think. All right, let's retest that one. This fifth one here isn't making a great connection either. Just cleaning these up. I did not anticipate that this would take as long as this, but it's not the fault of anybody but myself. I want to get a little more solder on this. Okay, these are together now. I don't know that they need to stay together. The next thing is to just verify, first of all, you do have a gap there. Yep, we do. And there was connectivity. Next thing to do is to put this IC in. I'm really good at taking that strap off and forgetting to put it back on. This is the IC. Really, with installing integrated circuits, it's not as intimidating as what you might think it would be. You just want to be careful and not make any mistakes with bending pins wrong and all that kind of stuff. So that's an integrated circuit. IC, a chip, if you will. This has a notch on it, and this has a dot on one side of it. If we can, or a notch. So this one has a dot and a notch on this end. Showing it to you is going to be very difficult. But that tells you which way to align this in this socket. Okay, so basically all you do is make sure that you got your pins aligned. Looks fairly aligned, and you start from one, usually the end opposite the hole, or the dot, and work toward it. And that's all there is to installing it. You make sure that you got, good seating across the board. And if you have the schematic, you can then go check this pin against wherever it goes, and this pin against wherever it goes, and so on and so forth with continuity. I don't have a schematic, so all good. we're done with steps 1 through whatever it was. We're done with the lower board assembly. So now all we have to do is go back to the upper board assembly and finish out the last few parts that it told us to finish out, which I'm trying to remember where it said set this aside for later. I should have marked it. Okay, we're on step 12. Step 12 of the upper board assembly. Okay, so on each of the toggle switches, do some stuff. So let's get those components. We're done with this one. Looks like it's this set. So we're down to these switches and stuff. The interesting thing is these boards are now together, so I wonder if I need to separate them. It looks like I probably will in order to continue. And I may have skipped a piece of the instructions that says, okay, now disassemble these, but let's see what we come up against. On each of the toggle switches, install a single nut. Okay, there's 2 toggle switches, we'll install a single nut. It's used as a spacer, evidently. And I'm going to set these 2 up here. I want to know how I'm supposed to solder onto the bottom of these, but let's see. Tighten the nuts for a snug fit. Save the other 2 for later. Set the switches aside for now. Okay. Interesting. On the 4 potentiometers, those are 4 potentiometers. Probably install a single nut or remove a nut, whatever it may be. Looks like there is a nut on these. On the 4 potentiometers are fitted with a washer and a nut used as spacers on the bushings. Tighten these nuts for a snug fit. Set the potentiometers away for later. Well, looks like these already have them installed. Let's just make sure they're snug. There is a spacer. There's a washer, basically, very thin one, and a nut, but this says tighten the nuts for a snug fit. Okay, and then set them aside. Oh, we'll put them up here. Okay, so we're already to 14. In this step, the tuning encoder switches potentiometers will be soldered to the PC board using the front half of the case. Front case half. Okay. This guy. For alignment. Take your time in this effort. It's important for a good fit within the housing. Do not solder any of these components until you're instructed to do so. To start, position the PC board on the display side up with the jacks closest to you. Okay, place the on-off switch onto the board, yada yada yada. Okay, so I'm seeing that this is not going to be able to be soldered if this board is together, so I'm going to go ahead and take that board apart now that I know that everything aligns between the top and the bottom board, and I'm going to set the bottom board off to the side. I also still need to get fingernail polish. There's a store up the road I just haven't felt like going to yet. So what I see is happening is I'm getting a lot more stuff in my little tray here. Hopefully all of that goes away fairly quickly. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to separate these two boards very gently. Or not so gently. Alright. And I'm going to set this board in a bag, set to the side for now. Alright. So basically the gist of it is we're using this to align this. Good news is lights and things look like they align well, so that's a bonus. Okay, place the on-off switch, switch 1, on the board with the slot and the bushing toward the center. Okay, so on these there's a slot right here, and we're doing switch 1 like so. Let's see, do not set the switch 1 on the board, blah, blah, blah. Place the 3 position spring return band RIT switch 2. Oh, are these different? This is the on off. This is the 3 position. So, yep, and it's a spring return. So let's see here. Let's make sure the slot is toward the inside. Okay. Place potentiometers carefully onto the board, making certain the correct part goes into the proper place. Well, I would say that it's pretty hard not to do that, because there's only one way these can go in. Doesn't matter which one goes where. A5K. Throw that on the ground. A10K or B10K. Gotcha. Yeah, these are different. It's a 10K. That's a 1K. And this is a 5K. Okay, so I've got one 1K, one 5K, and two 10K. All right, so let's see. Pot 1 must read 5K. Okay, pot 1 is the 5K. If it were me, I'm going to set these switches to the side because we haven't soldered them in yet. But getting these pots in is going to be more difficult than sliding those switches in, because the pots actually have little springs on the side to help hold them to the board. Okay, so pot 1K must read, pot 1 must read 5K. R29. Make sure I got that in the right spot. I don't know if I did or not before we go on. So that's the keyer pot. So we want this to go in the volume pot. See? But that says 10K on the board. 10K, 10K. I think the board may be mislabeled on this one. Pot R1 volume control must read 5K. R1, R1, 5K. So this one, and that says volume, so doesn't, I don't think it says volume on the board, but it does with where you would line that up on the, that deal, the case. So R1, RF gain must read 1K. RF gain is R26. R26 should be this one. It does say 1K on the board, and that matches up with where the RF gain is on the, but this pin's bent just a little bit. Bend that back out so we can get it in here. All right, that pot. The other two are both 10K, and both read 10K, so do not really matter. Just make sure, B10K, yep. Bend this out just a little bit. Okay, so now I need to make sure that this is a 3-position switch, and it's put back on the board. And this is a on-off, and it's put back on the board correctly. Okay, so now my assumption is that that sits on this and aligns everything, but let's see. Please, difficult to remove if you mess them up. The optical encoder is supplied with a nut and a thick washer. The washer is used as a separator. The nut will attach the encoder to the panel. You know, maybe we need to not have those snug because those need to go on the case to help secure the board to the case. So I just tested, I soldered 3 of these pins in here. You see how good this is. It's not going to be a great video, but 3 pins in here. And then I went and tested to see if other pins around it were making contact with those spots that those pins were trying to go to on the board, where the leads go. They are not. So now we're going to hopefully solder the other 3. I'm going to tell you, this might as well have been a surface mount component. For me, anyway. Yep, bridge just came across. Just got a bridge. Tell you, cleaning out that bridge is not going to be enjoyable. Yep, there's another one. Pretty sure there's another one. We're gonna have to test it with a voltmeter to know. I know that there's one right there for sure. I can't seem to get the solder to go to one pin or the other. It sure wants to bridge those two. So solder sucker time. Go back and hit them again. Okay, they all look good. Now time to test them. So, that one does not go there. That one does not go there, but that one does. This one does not, so that's a good sign. I don't know if those two are bridged and really don't have a good way of knowing. This one looks like it wraps around there and goes to there. Is that one? Or that one? Okay, so that one goes to there. This one does not. Those two are not bridged. That one's not. These pins are so small that I can't. Okay, so that one does not go to there or there, but this one goes to there, so that means that those two are not bridged. That one's not bridged. This one goes here. That one does not. Okay, so there should be no bridges across them. So, I should be able to pull this off of here. I should be able to pull. I don't like that encoder is only being held by those 6 very small pins, but that is what it is. Looks like there were other options at some point and some other solder holes and all that kind of stuff around there for a different version of it, but I think the other version would have stayed on this board a lot better, personally. Don't know if it's impossible to get now, though, with the situation. Once you're satisfied with the alignment, you can solder. There should be 32. After soldering, remove the clamps and 3 nuts holding the board. Do not lose the nuts. You'll need them later. Separate the board from the case. Set both aside for later. Note that the female connectors will be installed as part of the lower assembly procedures, which, okay, we did that. This completes the assembly. Proceed to the lower. So we've done the upper and the lower. See if I got any parts left that are, let's see, upper and lower instructions. I'm setting them to the side. So now I got to put these 2 boards back together, evidently. Looks like there was, maybe you were supposed to complete all of the upper. I don't know. I may have missed something in the instructions. It's entirely possible, but it said set these aside for later, so I set them aside for later, then went on to the lower, not realizing, but maybe some things changed at some point and the instructions weren't updated or something. But I'm going to put these 2 boards back together now that the upper is done, and it aligns. Everything aligns well. Okay, they slide together fairly easily. I don't know if I need to put I mean, am I ready to start? Let's see, operating instructions, preliminary checks and tests. We'll want to go through those. But I need to make cables. I mean, am I done? Let's see what this says. Final assembly, remember to remove the LED display protective covering. Few instructions on PA bias control. Just blue sig quality LED sensitivity on the board before installing the top case. Some users have commented that looks better without the plastic display window installed. You may or may not install it. Okay. I guess I'm left to my own here now. Maybe I've missed something in the instructions, but I think I'm left to my own now, which is fine with me. I've finished all of this, all the upper, all the lower. Here's knobs. So here's the case. I'm going to go ahead and screw these screws back in the bottom. Though it's going to be more difficult now that all those knobs are in place, but that's all good. It looks like the checks or the tests need to be done without the case on. I'm just going to get it in the case for right now. And make sure that everything fits well. I need to go get some of that fingernail polish. May need to separate the boards again when I get the fingernail polish. I know that one I can't get to. Yeah, I probably should go get fingernail polish, to be quite honest. I need to ask my wife if she has any. She goes and gets her nails done. I don't know if she has any here. If not, maybe Amazon will deliver some tomorrow, or I'll go up to the Dollar General that's a couple miles from here and get some. I hate getting out of the house. I hate it right now. So, still do. So, let's see if we can get these in here. So that looks all to be the correct direction. Looks like that slides in that way. This sets inside of here like so. See if all this aligns well. Still, don't know why it wouldn't. All right, so all of that's on there. It looks like these three help hold the case on. And help hold these switches to make sure they don't get messed up. Let's throw some screws in that were in the case bag. Oh, nee. Did I lose those? It's not in that bag, not in that bag. They're there. Just get that snug in there. That one I got a little tighter than I wanted, but I think it's safe for me to remove this grounding deal. Okay, so the next, it looks like all of these are like just stuffs, right? But knob switches. There are a couple other things in here, but I'm going to go ahead and install those real quick and then show you what it looks like completed. Is there a flat spot? All right, so here's what I'm going to do. And turn it all the way to that position. Put that on min and apply pressure. Nope, there is a set screw in the side. That's what the secret is. And it's a flat head. Maybe this size, let's see, I bet it's smaller than that. Oh, that'll work. Okay, So I'm going to turn the potentiometer to minimum. I'm going to set the, well, loosen the screw evidently. Some, not too much. Set it down on there. Right, this is not rocket science here. Then tighten it back up. Max goes beyond max actually. Min goes straight to min. So potentiometers go a little wider than the print, so in any event, I think min is more important. And max, you never really want to go above max, right? I do like my labels to read correctly, but maybe that's just me being anal. And then later, I will come back and do the optional tests. Make sure that everything's working, tell you any issues that I've seen with the radio itself. I've got to go make power pole cables. Decide if I need to use some sort of a buck capacitor or something to go down to 9 volts. I don't know yet. Or if this thing operates at 5 volts or what. Don't know. Not really to that point yet, but I can't really test until I figure that out. So I'll do some research on that. Probably not today. Today this is going on a shelf and waiting for me to learn some CW and all that fun stuff. But all right, so those 4 knobs have been put on, and we got one big knob, it looks like. The very last piece, because you can put the little protective thing over there, but I don't think I'm going to do it. So, all right, connectors is all I got left, and I'm not going to record building some cables. I'm done.